Blue-White Tailgate is back, and the Nittany Lions get ready to go to Crow Park to take on UCF. We'll preview the game. Talk to Todd Dienhart from BTN. Bill O'Brien set up the game. Todd, what do you have?
Steve, can you believe it? They asked me back, and of course I said yes. It's just too much fun hanging around with the best play-by-play man in the business. I tell you what I have, the spirit of competition. It's renewed under Coach James Franklin, and all of these guys are fighting for their jobs. And understand, we've got some company on the set.
National champion Trey Bauer, you ready to do this?
I'm ready to do it.
All right, let's get it done. Blue-White Tailgate is next. Great to have you with us on Blue-White Tailgate. Steve Jones, Sadowski's back.
Hey,
all right?
Yeah.
They changed coaches, so we changed and brought in Bauer. Good to have you.
Thanks.
All right.
It's all good.
It is all good. New season changes the whole thing. How do you like the way the off-season's gone?
Well, I think it's gone great. I mean, the fact that, James has come in, brought most of his staff with him. They're a very enthusiastic group, and I'm really looking forward to the season.
Yeah, what about you? How do you look at you want to talk about a guy winning the off-season.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely electric with Coach Franklin. If you're a 16 or 17-year-old kid, how can you refuse James Franklin? And what we're finding out is they can't. They just keep signing up, and he keeps signing up recruits for next year and beyond. He has just brought an unparalleled energy to this program.
And yet, out of the gate, they will face a quality opponent out of the gate. Defense. These guys have defense.
Well, they've got 10 returning starters. They were a very good unit last year. A lot of speed. They've got size up front, and it's going to be a challenge for Penn State.
And there's no question about that. And a lot of people try to talk to James Franklin about, all right, big picture, what do you see? He's locked in on one thing and one thing only.
I'm worried about Central Florida. I'm excited about that game and going there. I think it's a really good team. I think if you look at that roster, they got almost everybody back.
Frankly speaking, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Blaze Alexander. Look, any coach that's worth his salt locks in on one game only. And that, big picture takes care of itself later.
Well, and that first game is the one that you've got a month leading up to. You got a lot of time to game plan for that, evaluate your talent, evaluate their film, and see what you can do. One thing you notice when you look at Central Florida, they're without Blake Bortles, they're without Storm Johnson, two guys we remember very well from last year. But as you guys already discussed, there's a lot of talent returning.
Trey, how tough is it when you go in and that quarterback spot changes and you don't have any tape on a guy?
Well, I think it's very difficult. It's more about the scouting from the previous year. I think it's important to know that, it's kind of a system where they can, put somebody else in that system and they're going to be okay. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit later about the offensive line, which I think is going to be the key to this game.
Right, no question about that. All right, let's get to our stalker drive of the game. You're saying the preseason. What drive of the game do you have? Well, it actually goes back to last year's UCF game on our stalker drive of the game. Penn State was right on the verge of winning this thing, and the kickoff, well, just barely made it into the end zone. Then Storm Johnson, Penn State, Glenn Carson makes a big play there. Bortles gets the ball out. J.J. Wharton's a heck of a receiver, and look at the play he makes out of it. Then Johnson keeps this drive alive, and what they did was they basically took the clock and they bled it down to 0. And you could see Blake Bortles, and that's what they did. That's our stalker drive of the game right there. They took it with a veteran team, and they said, you're not going to win.
This is a Fiesta Bowl championship team. They were 11-1. That is a quality opponent that came into Happy Valley and left with a 3-point victory. So a lot of frustration, though, to watch a team finish you off on your field like that, and you can't get off the field and give the offense another try.
Well, the only time Penn State's played off the Continental 48 was the Aloha Bowl.
Yes.
In 83.
1983.
Okay?
I was there.
You were there.
Yes.
Okay, now they're going over. Can you believe they're going to play in Ireland?
It's a great opportunity for the kids. It's a great opportunity for the program. I think it's going to present some challenges for Coach Franklin and his staff because it is the first game to go halfway across the world to play is going to be really fun to watch.
18-year-old Trey Bauer.
In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Yes.
Just trying to contemplate that. Well, let's get to upon further review and bring in someone who can stabilize the segment, and that's Fran Fisher, who talks about the brand of the Pennsylvania State University.
At my age, 20 years have to elapse before nostalgia kicks in. Since it's been just 12 years since the first meeting between Penn State and the University of Central Florida, that means I have nothing to reminisce about. Now what do? Well, since this Saturday's breakfast fair meeting between the two teams is being played in Dublin, Ireland, I could talk about the 932-plus pubs in Dublin. I know some guys that do try to visit them all, but I'm not an expert on pubs. Bars, maybe. Enough nonsense. I got to thinking about the Penn State brand going international. I remember the time when the Penn State brand didn't reach south of the Mason-Dixon line or west of the Mississippi. In those far reaches, Penn State was consistently confused with the University of Pennsylvania, and thus an Ivy League affiliation. There was a game at Iowa in the 70s when a TV guy wished us good luck in the Ivy League before our discussion, and even when corrected, repeated the same well wish afterward. Okay, about this Saturday's game, don't feel sorry for UCF coach George O'Leary because the NFL now has quarterback Blake Bortles and running back Storm Johnson. I know these two guys are mostly responsible for the Knights' 34-31 win last season, but the cupboard is hardly bare, and the guy can coach. I have the same feeling about another college coach. Name? James Franklin. I wonder if anybody has ever called him Jim. For Blue White Tailgate, this has been Upon Further Review. I'm Fran Fisher.
So delightful to hear the great voice back, Fran Fisher. 932 pubs in Ireland. I just figured I'd go to your strong suit right away.
Well, I mean, I just saw the literary pub tour crawl, and I was kind of more interested in that than the actual pub tour.
Oh,
as you know.
You've got intellectual on us.
Yes, I have.
Well, the guy that's put it all together is Bill O'Brien. I'll talk with him as we continue on Blue White Tailgate after this.
It was a quick 2 years for Coach O'Brien, but he certainly left an indelible mark on the Penn State program. Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate. And Trey, I got to tell you, I'm impressed. One segment, and you already got rid of Steve Jones.
Well,
that is clout right there.
Well, it's not a difficult thing getting rid of Steve Jones, and it's probably doing us all a favor that he's not here. But thank you.
Well, there's a reason why we mentioned Steve and a reason why we see Coach O'Brien, because Steve had a chance to catch up to one of the architects of the Croke Park Classic. A great idea.
I think it's awesome. I think that Bill would have loved to been able to travel and be part of the Penn State contingent going over there. He was very instrumental setting it up, and obviously we wish him well in Houston. But
all right, well, let's all sit back and witness the reunion between Steve Jones and Bill O'Brien.
All right, thanks, guys, and very pleased to be joined by former head coach of the Nittany Lions, current head coach of the Houston Texans, and I consider a good friend, Bill O'Brien. Bill, great to hear from you.
Well, great to hear your voice again, Steve, as always.
Okay. You wanted to put this together. Now, you're going through, obviously, something no other coaches really had to go through. So take me through the thought process about making this game in Ireland happen for these kids.
At the time, with no bowl games, we felt like it was important for both our players and our fans at Penn State there to have what we would consider a destination game. And, we looked at a lot of different places, Hawaii, San Diego. We looked at a lot of different opponents. And at the end of the day, what actually came to fruition was the ability to play in Ireland and then find the opponent, which was Central Florida. It wasn't too hard to get George O'Leary to change his schedule around to schedule a game in Dublin. So we felt like it was a great opportunity for our players at the time, us being there, and then a good opponent, obviously, in Central Florida.
And so there's no question about the Central Florida being a quality opponent, but you had to move the schedule a little bit because Virginia actually had been on the schedule for a year ago, and you got Central Florida as a home and away. How much did it take to do that part of it?
Yeah, I believe, as I remember it, I think that Virginia just didn't want to play us anymore, so they got us there in 12 at home, and they didn't want to come to Beaver Stadium. You know what I mean? So, and I don't blame them, because Beaver Stadium's a very difficult place to play. So then, and I called a few teams, Georgia, Leary, and Central Florida being one of them.
As you and I know, relationships mean a lot. The fact that you had a long-standing relationship with George, do you think that really opened the door to really fast-track this?
Yeah, no question, no question. I know we spoke to a few different schools. Boston College was one of them. I think one of the service academies, and they just couldn't get it. They couldn't schedule it, and George was the one guy that obviously could move his schedule around and get the game. So we were glad to do that. And obviously, me having worked for him for 8 seasons, we had a relationship, and we worked it out, and it worked out well.
James Franklin's not changing when they leave. It's going to be after practice on Tuesday, and then it's going to come back right after the game. So in other words, that's the schedule that you had put in place. Why did you put the schedule in place like that, Bill, where you really close that gap a little bit and you're not in Ireland longer?
We wanted the players to get over there and be able to get adjusted to that. But I think the other thing was for us, I don't want to speak for James, but we felt like there was going to be at least a day over there where the guys could experience the culture of Ireland. I know when I was there, we had planned to take them around the city and tour some of the sites and things like that. So I think that was part of it too, to make it somewhat of an educational experience. Obviously, James and the guys are going over there to win a game, no question about it. But I felt that for us, it was also a chance for those kids to be overseas and experience that.
What would be the concerns for any coach when you're trying to, quote, make sure you're keeping control over a large group?
I wouldn't even call it a concern. I think it's just logistically, there's a lot of planning that has to go into that, from the schedule for the kids to the equipment room and how the offices are going to be set up over there, if they're going to do that in the hotel, how we're practicing, where we're practicing, those types of things. So, with the kids at Penn State, you have just a bunch of great kids there. So you're not real concerned about, their behavior or anything like that. Those guys are, outstanding kids.
When this was put together, how concerned were you about the return part and having to play the next week?
That was a concern because, there was an opponent on the horizon that we were coming back to play, having to recover from some jet lag and a tough opponent, a very physical football game it's going to be. But, I felt, again, the positives outweighed the negatives. Our ability to bring those kids over to Ireland and have them have that experience, I think that far outweighed, maybe having to get a little extra sleep when they got back.
You did great things in your 2 years here. Now you're with the Houston Texans. What's the transition been like for you, Bill, to go back to the NFL?
It's been a good transition. All these jobs are very challenging, Steve. It was a very, very tough decision for myself and my family to leave Penn State. We love Penn State. Penn State will always mean a lot to us. At the end of the day, we tried to do what was best for our 2 sons and what was best for us as a family. And
we wish you nothing but the best of luck to you and your family moving forward. Bill, thanks.
Well, I can't say enough about Penn State and Steve. You and Jack were awesome to me and our staff and our players when we were there, and it was. We that coached there for those 2 years. We have fond memories of some very special kids and some very special wins, and most importantly, some special people that we met and hopefully be friends with for a long time. So I know they got a heck of a team coming back this year, and I wish them all the luck in the world.
Bill, thank you, and good luck to you and the Texans.
Thanks, Steve.
Let's go back to you guys in the set.
No surprise to hear from Coach O'Brien and that he's doing well and that he's moved on to the NFL, Trey.
Absolutely not. I think he was the perfect guy for the job with the situation what happened with Joe Paterno. I think he held Penn State in high regard, and he got us through a very difficult time.
We wish him a lot of luck with the Texans for sure. All right, coming back on the Blue-White Tailgate, we go in-depth, break down this year's Nittany Lions and their opponent, the defending Fiesta Bowl champs.
What do all of those players have in common? They're all back. But Penn State is also suffering key losses, as any team is entering this season. And look at this right off the top, Trey. I mean, right there, those are areas that you have to take care of initially.
Yeah, I think it's really important, the offensive line, and we are going to talk about that in more depth. But if you can't protect someone or you can't knock someone off the ball, it's going to be a long season, and it's going to be very interesting for Penn State regarding those losses. And they've had guys who had a lot of playing time.
No question. And now, Todd, you take a closer look at all of this and much more.
Well, absolutely. And Coach Franklin has brought that renewed spirit of competition, and players are fighting for every spot, and they wouldn't have it any other way.
If you do well, you're going to have the opportunity to play. So it all comes down to you. It doesn't come down to politics. It's all just, if you're going to be able to benefit the team, then you're going to be out there. And in the end of the day, that's what's most important, is benefiting the team. So we're going to get the best 11 guys out there.
Not just the 11 guys on offense and defense. The ticket to the field could be special teams.
Goal is to help us win any way I can, get on the field, do whatever I can. But, Penn State college football, it's competitive. There's a lot of players, a lot of great athletes here. And, I want to help any way I can, as you know. Mostly through special teams.
I'm a fullback, and I want to start at fullback this year, and I've been working really hard, talking to coaches, seeing what I can improve on, seeing what I'm good at, how I can balance myself out. And this summer was big, just getting physically ready for it, speed, conditioning, strength, everything.
Really, it's learning the defense and being coachable and just going at everything 110%, and just it's effort.
It is about effort, and when Coach Franklin was asked about Christian Hackenberg, just to show you that spirit of competition, one of the first things he said is, I'm getting good reports on Michael O'Connor, and that's what he's trying to establish right now, is that competition. Trey, you know how this can go. We can speculate. We can sit here and say, oh, we're expecting big years out of this guy or that guy, but there are players we don't know about yet, and that's what the fun part of the early season is, who've earned playing time in the weight room or are earning playing time right now by the way they're performing on the practice field.
I absolutely agree. You could argue that Christian Hackenberg is kind of the face of the franchise right now, but there might be some guys that are coming through the system that you've never heard of, that all of a sudden they ignite the program in many different ways, and I'm excited about it. You have that in college football. You don't have that in professional football.
And as a player, as you grew as a veteran, you started to notice younger players that you would say to yourself, I can't wait next year for that kid. You saw that when you played.
Oh, absolutely. I think about some of the great players that played here at Penn State. We had a guy, Blair Thomas, who was a top 5 draft pick, who was a third-string running back his sophomore year. The players will know because they're on the field and they're in the weight room and they're doing all the different things with the guys. But again, it's going to be exciting to watch.
And as a sophomore, John Cappelletti played in the secondary, just so you know. And let's talk about the secondary. Young, but there are a lot of players. Talk about competition, Todd. There's plenty of it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan Lucas is quite an anchor that they can go to over there on the corner. Talked to Trevor Williams at Media Day. He expects to be on an island. He's got a lot of confidence, wants to go one-on-one. And Coach Franklin just keeps talking about the depth at safety. Adrian Amos, that name just keeps coming up and up and up. How thrilled they are with him. Ryan Kaiser, how smart he is, always in the right position. They expect a lot of him. And don't forget about Malik Golden, too. So there's a lot of names in the mix here in the secondary.
And you mentioned 3 safeties because all 3 are going to play. And Trey, the game has changed so much. Everyone talks, oh, they're playing a nickel package, they're playing a dime. You really have to do that today the way it's played it, don't you?
I think so. The game is different. The fact is you need to have athletic, strong people who can cover and can tackle well in open space, and I think that Penn State has that. Do they have a lot of game experience? Some of them do, some of them don't.
And one of them happens to be Adrian Amos, which brings up the star position, which Todd referenced. Bob Shoup on how he likes to employ that in this defense.
There's ways to scheme around any limitations in depth at any position, and specifically as it relates to linebacker, this star package or the 4-2-5 package is one of the ways the teams can do that. And I think it plays in our favor to a certain extent, because defensively what you're trying to do is try to maximize your athletic ability on the field. And that body type, that tall, long, athletic, hybrid safety outside linebacker has become a key component for what we do.
Very quickly, though, let's talk about a two-way linebacker, a guy that can play the pass as well as play the run, the value of that in today's defense.
Well, it's invaluable. The fact is that the game is so wide open. They've changed some of the rules. The fact is you have to be able to run and cover, and you also need to take on a 300-pounder at the same time.
And our family clothesline player to watch on defense is Mike Hull. He is the definition of that, an outstanding two-way linebacker. You see his career numbers, but this guy gets it done. He understands the proper depth of a drop that a linebacker needs to make to disrupt the pass game.
Absolutely. It's an imperative for this year's team for him to stay healthy right there in the middle as he moves from the outside to the middle, kind of controlling stuff. And it's always interesting to watch Penn State and their linebackers. Who steps up to be Batman and who's the Robin the next year? You know what I mean? Like Hull was right there with Glenn Carson last year. And you always have that guy that steps in, maybe takes over an outside position and we didn't know much about, or separates himself from the rest of the competition and gets in there. So we'll see what happens with that this year.
And of course on offense, that means Allen Robinson has to be replaced on this team. Numbers hard to replace. I mean, you look at that at Penn State over the years, those would be career numbers. Those were his season numbers. So the guy that has to step in. Now Geno Lewis goes from being, okay, I'm on the other side, not as much attention to being the primary guy.
Well, I mean, that is going to be a challenge for him, and I think that he's up for the challenge. I think that he's been working well with Hack in the preseason, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he had a big game against Wisconsin. But what Penn State also has is versatility at tight end, and because of the versatility at tight end, James Franklin says they can exploit that.
I actually think where a lot of the makeup for the production that we lost will come from the tight end position. I believe that's where we have the most veteran players. That's where we have the most experience and depth.
And that comes into play. Adam Brenneman's out indefinitely. Mike Gesicki is a freshman that can fill that spot.
Well, it's interesting because Coach Franklin was asked, well, how do you replace Allen Robinson? And he didn't mention the wide receivers. He went right to the tight end position, right? That's who he mentioned. So Jesse James, of course, a very heralded prospect. He mentioned Jesse James and making sure that he can block effectively to stay on the field. And then also you got Kyle Carter. Brenneman, losing him is a big loss. He started to come on and was really effective at the end of last season. But you have options, and you know Hackenberg knows those guys are there. They're big targets.
And the fourth guy is Brent Wilkerson, by the way, who'll finally get his shot. He's finally healthy. Offensive line, Trey's referenced it a couple of times already in the show. John Stroh with a closer look at that group.
Penn State football fans must feel like they're stuck in the movie Groundhog Day, with the same issues popping up year after year. Once again, Penn State enters the 2014 opener with question marks on the offensive line. Last season, the Nittany Lions averaged 174 yards per game rushing, their highest output since 2009. Through injuries and graduation, Donovan Smith is the lone returning starter, and Penn State will have to find ways to help the offensive line develop.
We're going to have to call the game to help with those things. That's moving the pocket. That's getting the ball out of his hand as quickly as we possibly can. And there's a variety of ways of doing that. That's committing to the running game.
And pounding the rock has always been a lineman's best friend.
We're going to run it down people's throats. You know, that's one of the best things an offensive lineman can ask for is to run the ball behind you, and you know, because that's the only time you get to impose your will on the defender. You know, just come off the ball, fire in all cylinders, feet, hat, and hands, and you know, just mano a mano, show who's the better guy. So yeah, definitely the run game. It's going to be fun.
Heading into the opener with UCF, the starters appear to be Smith, Anthony Mangiero, as well as Brian Guy and Derek Dowry, who have moved over from defense, along with Brendan Mahone or Andrew Nelson at the other tackle position.
They're working extremely hard. They're working together well. You know, they're a very prideful group. I mean, they get very little attention unless things go wrong. Herb does a really good job of bonding with those guys, not only with him, but getting the whole group to bond together and to communicate as one and play as one, because that's what it's all about. You can be wrong on the O-line, but everybody has to be wrong together, if you understand what I'm saying. Everybody's got to be on the same page, and you still got a chance to be successful.
Doubt and speculation surrounding the offensive line in Nittany Nation is only fueling the fire to perform on Saturdays.
If no one's talking about you, then you're not doing anything good. So they're going to either talk about you good or bad, and either way, you're still going to have to do something to prove them wrong or prove them right. So, you know, we're taking it as motivation. It is what it is. And, you know, just everybody just going to watch and see.
With a standout quarterback in Christian Hackenberg, perhaps the best tight end group in the nation, and 3 capable backs, a solid season from the offensive line could carry Penn State a long way. For the Blue White Tailgate Show, I'm John Stroh.
And it's interesting because Donovan Smith could be one of the top 5 tackles in all the Big Ten this year, but we'll see how it plays out. Cohesion is going to be important. Now our family clothesline offensive player to watch. Oh, I don't know, Christian Hackenberg. He might be a good choice.
Shocker.
I mean, I know you're stunned. The arguments that we had in the green room were terrible about this choice, but explain why you picked him.
Well, he's good. I mean, that's as simple. You know, all for the analysis. He's really, really good. You know, what a great freshman season he's coming off of. I know he's got a new system, but Coach Franklin said that's not going to be a big deal. They're going to do a lot of things similar. They're going to put a lot of things in his hands. One of the things I keep finding interesting, and I'm going to really look for, is they talk about his running ability and his athletic ability. And, you know, so for Hackenberg, I mentioned that. He kind of laughed it off a little bit, but he does have that athletic ability to move the chains if he needs to with his legs.
Yeah, he's a long strider when he runs. He eats up a lot of yards. The running backs, the versatility at running back, the pluses there.
Well, I think you've got a big guy in Zwinek who can, you know, move the pile. You've got Belton who can kind of take the edge. They've got big guys. They've got quick guys. I mean, that's not the issue for Penn State this year. Is not going to be their running back position.
And then the value of a defensive line. Middle linebacker forever. You tell me what they can do to make your life easier.
Well, a defensive lineman, I mean, you can't be, if you think about the great linebackers through the Penn State history, there have been great defensive linemen in front of them. And you would not have those linebackers making those plays if it were not for the defensive linemen.
And Bob Shoop likes to game plan around all of this to make that happen.
But my swag, I think, is when I sit down with a player and he sees that I can put him in a position to be successful. I can help him maximize his ability. This is how we're going to utilize you. These are the things I think are your strengths. These are the things I think are your weaknesses. We are going to put you in a position to make plays. We're going to make teams, you know, put you in a position where the weak person is going to protect you, whether it's a running back, whether it's the weakest pass protectors, things like that. Put him in a position to make plays. And
what I love about it, too, guys, is that he does it from above. He mentions that he likes to be up there in the press box or upstairs watching everything happen to put the guys in the best position.
And you know what? You don't want to know why? Because when he watches game film, that's the perspective you watch his game film from. That's why Bob Shoop likes to be upstairs. UCF is next. Well, for those who a couple of years ago asked who's UCF, they answered all the questions last year. They won the Fiesta Bowl. They beat Baylor. Baylor with Petty at quarterback, and Norwood at wide receiver. They open it up and the whole thing. Trey, these guys did a number on them in the Fiesta Bowl.
Well, I mean, the fact is, anytime you have, you know, 4 or 5 weeks to prepare, it obviously gives the defense, you know, a lot of different schemes that they can work on. They've got a veteran defensive team. They played well. They played tough, and it wasn't surprising to me.
No, it really wasn't. Now, George O'Leary, what a career he has had, without question. You look at what he's done at all of his stops along the way. Some guys can flat out coach. He's one of those guys. He's a coach's coach.
Well, and I like to see coaches what they do with programs that don't have traditional success. Hello, James Franklin, Vanderbilt, right? Built that program up, got the job done there. Now he's elevating himself, seeing what he can do with an established program in Penn State. George O'Leary goes to UCF. They have their best season in their 35-year history for the Knights. So, yes, the man can coach no matter where he ends up.
Look, there's so many entities in this football team that we know about offensively. Stand back, we heard James Franklin reference earlier, second team all-conference, Wharton, Perriman, Hall, but we know nothing about the quarterback.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like, this is the tale of two cities, right? So you've got Hackenberg, everyone knows about, you know, a proven player, guy who really put up big numbers last year as a freshman, which is unbelievable. And then you have the other guy. Who is the other guy?
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's what you're going to look at. Storm Johnson opted for the NFL early, and James Franklin's going to tell all of you, so what?
Everybody says, well, they lost the tailback. Well, the second team tailback made second team all conference. You know, so I think it's going to be a tremendous challenge. It's a veteran team. It's a veteran coach. You know, plus they're going to show up there, and not only are they going to have their team and their fans, but then George and all of his cousins are going to be at the game as well. So they got that going for them as well.
Excuse me, we have Bauer. Okay, fine. The wideouts. Perriman, of course, you know about his dad. You saw him in the Fiesta Bowl.
Great player. If his son is half the player that his father is, he's going to have a great career.
Well, in fact, I think he's an NFL look. But then Hall and Wharton. I think Wharton, to me, is an NFL player because he's a chain mover.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these guys, they don't just move it 10 yards, they'll move it 20 on you. So their averages are up there, 15, 20 yards. They are dangerous after the catch. Renell Hall, that dual threat, can get it done. And then J.J. Wharton, he had over 100 yards receiving against Penn State. So the secondary guys that are coming back, they remember him very well. 7 catches, over 100 yards.
You know what this reminds me of in some ways? Is DJ Dozier, Kenny Jackson, Kevin Bauer lining up against Nebraska, which was a great team, obviously, but no Todd Blackledge.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where, to me, again, it's going to come down to in the trenches. Who is going to win in the trenches? I mean, I think that between UCF returning or having to replace a bunch of starters, Herb Hand with the group that he has, it's going to be interesting.
And that's the part right there. I think you're right, which then brings us, let's continue with trench warfare. UCF brings with them a front seven that really can play. How important is cohesion for a front seven? We talk about the offensive line, but what about a defensive cohesion front seven?
Well, I think it's important that, again, if depending on what the scheme is, you need to be able to dominate and you need to be able to control the line of scrimmage. If you're up front and whatever defense you're going to run, if you're going to run a 4-2-5 like Shoop had said, you need to be able to control the line of scrimmage. If you can't do that, you're going to have big problems.
One of the key guys is Troy Gray, for example, had 62 tackles last year. The middle linebacker's outstanding. But no matter what they do offensively, they have scoring range because of Sean Moffitt.
Well, guess what? What was the total last year? By 3 points, right? Last year, these games tend to come down to field goals, don't they? Sean Moffitt, 21 of 23 field goal range. Didn't miss an extra point, 49 of 49. Missed just 2 kicks all of last year. So if this one comes down to a field goal, UCF might have the edge in that department.
Yeah, and and special teams is an area they've worked a lot on in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, the way I think it's going to go down, if I had to guess, would be it's going to be Ficken versus Moffitt. Unfortunately for Penn State, Moffitt is a good Irish name, and they're playing the Croke Park Classic. So hopefully Sam will bring his A game.
Well, the recruiting segment. Has Penn State recruited anybody? Oh, the list is long. We'll talk about it coming up.
We are going to dominate the state. We are going to dominate the state. We are going to dominate the region.
And so far, Coach Franklin is backing up those words. We're back here on the Blue White Tailgate, and we're talking about recruiting. And that means Andrew Kalista is with me now. And this is a subject we could go on for quite a while. But there's 2 sets of rankings. The first is those recruiting rankings, which Penn State's doing very well in, and that will lead you to the polls. That's where you want to see your team at the end of the season.
That's right. If you want to win in November, if you want to get to the college football playoff, you need the Jimmy and the Joes. And right now, Coach Franklin is getting the Jimmy and the Joes, ranked number 6 in the country by Rivals.com.
Traditional recruiting territories. Florida, certainly one of them. Central Florida, our opponent this week. 69 of their players on the roster are from the Sunshine State. Pennsylvania is becoming that territory for Coach Franklin. That's what he set out to do.
That's right, Todd. Right now, Coach Franklin has 5 of the top 6 guys in the state of Pennsylvania committed to the program. And not only it's Pennsylvania, it's 18 within a 250-mile radius. That is dominating the region.
And you can help the coach's caravan certainly help with that as he got to all the areas that he wanted to get to and in front of all the kids that he wanted to get in front of. And he's addressed those need areas, starting with offensive line, and from there on, he's addressing those concerns.
Well, we all know that the offensive line is an issue with this year's Penn State team. So how do you do that? You go out, you get some Jimmy and the Joes. And he went out to Baldwin High School. He got Sterling Jenkins. I have him as the number 2 player in the state. Most people have him as the number 1 player in the state. He's 6'8". He's 308 pounds. The man is huge, and I call him a man because that's what he looks like. He is an excellent blocker, but he has a little bit of raw talent with the footwork. You could teach footwork. You can't teach size.
Yeah, those space eaters, they are very important to have on both sides of the line. Tell us about some of the other commitments you're impressed with.
Actually, 2 guys out of Archbishop Wood, outside of Philadelphia. Ryan Bates, he's another offensive lineman. He's a little bit smaller, and I say a little bit smaller. He's only 285 pounds, as if
it's all relative.
Yeah, as if I compare to him. But you know what? he's smart, and he's a good drive blocker. A little bit undersized right now, but he has a good frame that he could pack the pounds on. And also, linebacker, that's an area of need. They only have one commitment. It's Jake Cooper, or excuse me, two commitments. Jake Cooper, he's a teammate of Bates. Very smart guy, knows the history of linebacker use, knows Trey Bauer, knows Jack Ham. That's what you want in guys, and he knows Coach Shoop's terminology.
And Coach Franklin, he's talking about the spirit of competition. All these guys know, hey, we have a chance to play as freshmen, and that is drawing them to Happy Valley.
That's right, and it's the enthusiasm within the program, the fan base, and just the energy around it. That's what you need to do to get these guys to come in. And everybody that's been committing so far to Penn State, they've also expressed that they want to stay committed, that they're not going to flip. So far, they've only lost one guy, and who knows, a phone call in late February could switch that commitment back to Penn State.
A couple openings have been created by injuries. Let's take a look at our Health South injury update, and you see a couple of names on the list on the offensive line, Miles Diefenbach, and then Ben Klein at linebacker, and Adam Brenneman out indefinitely at tight end.
Yeah, that's a big loss for Penn State because Brenneman, he was going to be that guy that could come in. He was a very good blocker as a freshman, also be able to create space out on patterns. And also, he was a contributor on special teams last year, too. And that's a great place for freshmen to come in and get some early PT time.
You know, we're talking about the 2015 class. Won't be long before we're talking about 2016, already getting guys to sign up for the Nittany Lions.
That's right. There's guys all over the place that have already been expressing interest. A lot of quarterbacks coming into Penn State. We're going to touch on them a little bit later in the season. But, hey, Penn State, you got to like where you're at. You're sitting at number 6 right now. You're behind Alabama. They might as well be an NFL football team. South Carolina, they're at number 3 in recruiting rankings. They have 27 commitments. But, hey, Penn State is holding their own, and they're getting the guys that they need to get.
And very importantly, number 1 in the North. That is very important. All right, Andrew, thanks a lot. That's our recruiting update. When we come back on the Blue-White Tailgate, we're going to hear from Trey, Steve, and myself. We'll give you our keys to the game as they get ready to play Central Florida in the Croke Park Classic.
We'll see if they can produce big plays again. Steve Jones, Todd Sadowski, joined now by Tom Dienhart, BTN. They've been making the tour. Tom, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, we've been all across, the Midwest, the Midlands, the East Coast, sort of kicking the tires, taking every team for, I guess, one last test drive, so to speak, before everything kicks off. So it's been fun and very informative, too.
Well, also informative because when you went to Ohio State, Braxton Miller was out there. He's not going to play this year. So discuss the impact that might have.
Yeah, what a dynamic. Arguably the most dynamic player, not just in the Big Ten, but maybe in the nation. He's right there at the top. Leading Heisman contender, 2-time Silver Football Award winner, as a Big Ten MVP. You subtract him from Ohio State, and I don't care how promising prospective replacement J.T. Barrett is, there's no way I think Ohio State can have a truly special season. I think now, without a doubt, Michigan State is a clear front runner in the Big Ten, and the conference's best hope to get one of those 4 playoff spots.
Hey, Tom, Todd Sadowski here, and you mentioned the impact it's going to have on the rest of the conference. It's now broken up into the East versus the West. Michigan State, do they have to run to the table to get to a playoff situation? I mean, assess the overall strength now of the conference if you lose a Braxton Miller for Ohio State.
Yeah, Todd, you're right. Now you have to think a win over Ohio State may not have the cachet or augment your strength of schedule like it would had Miller been on that team. How many quality wins could a team like Michigan State really net this year? I mean, it's up for debate. And, of course, quality of wins, your strength of schedule is a big component of the upcoming playoff for the selection committee. So, yeah, I mean, their work's cut out from them. They may have to run the table to get a playoff spot. And, of course, week 2 of the season, Michigan State is at Oregon, a huge, huge game now. It was big before Miller got hurt. It's even larger now that he's out. Again, you hate to say any game is must-win in early September, but the Spartans really want to, I think, keep themselves in that playoff hunt, at least early on. They may have to go to Eugene and beat a team that's considered by most to be a top 3 or top 5 team in the country.
Tom, as you've done the tour, any team that you've looked at and said, you know what, that might be a little bit better group than maybe I thought?
I tell you what, I think a team like team like Minnesota and a team like Northwestern, those two teams, you know, when you talk about Big Ten West teams, I love Iowa, people like Wisconsin, Nebraska, but Minnesota, Northwestern in particular, may be a team worth watching, even without Vendrick Mark or Christian Jones, the wide receiver, two players they've lost. A team with a lot of veteran talent, a team with a chip on its shoulder coming off a very disappointing 5-7 season. I'm not saying they're going to win the West, but they're a team that looked a little bit better than I thought, particularly on the defensive side of the ball in that secondary.
And of course, we're going to be watching Penn State very closely, Tom, all season long. And Coach Franklin's there. It's time now to do the X's and the O's. So your assessment of the job that he's done from a coaching standpoint in game, and I assume you're going to be watching closely to see those halftime adjustments, just to see how he and his staff handle game situations.
I think, you know, they acquitted themselves pretty well during their tenure in Music City with Vanderbilt. Taking what Bobby Johnson started there at Nashville and taking it to a whole nother level there, not just with their X's and O's, but with their recruiting. And, of course, Penn State fans have seen, you know, the Franklin machine in action when it comes to recruiting and promotions and selling the program. He's off the charts. He's won everything up until now. Now, again, the ball is going to get kicked off August 30th. And, again, I think, you know, his staff, you know, Shoop, Donovan, and the whole crew. He's got a nice staff. I just think, personnel-wise, some of the deficiency there may be tough to overcome. I don't care how good you are with X's and O's if your talent's going to be a little short. And they certainly look like they're short on the offensive line. Not much depth at linebacker as well. There are some strong points. I like that D-line in the secondary. Of course, running backs, some good options there. Wide receivers is another potential concern. And, you know, Christian Hackenberg, you sort of worry about him. I do working behind that offensive line and maybe how he's going to fit, how they can make his skill set work with some of their issues up front.
Tom, thanks so much for the time. Greatly appreciate it very much.
Hey, you got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Be good.
All right, Tom Dienhart from BTN joining us. And coming up, of course, we'll take a look at our predictions, keys to the game, and so forth as we continue taking a look at Penn State UCF in the opener at Crow Park. It's 82,000 seats there. That's the fourth largest stadium in Europe.
Is that right?
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
It's the fourth largest stadium in Europe. Amazing.
You just soak up knowledge around this man. He just, you know what I'm saying? I'm smarter every time I'm next to you, Steve.
This is the big U right here. Okay, useless. Okay, okay. Itinerary time. Now, Andrew Kalista for us. Blue White Tailgate's gonna have a presence over there. He's going over. This will not be his itinerary, but the team's itinerary.
In a few hours, Penn State takes on UCF. So, how did the Lions get to Ireland? Wednesday, 12:45, Coach Franklin meets with us at Beaver Stadium. An hour of chit-chat, head over to Losh for practice at 4:30. Team dinner, load up, wait for Steve Jones because he's always late, and bus 99 miles to Harrisburg. Load up the 747 for a 3,244-mile flight in 6 hours and 21 minutes. Oh, I almost forgot. Avoid the volcano. Land in Dublin around 5 a.m.
Customs is a huge deal. I mean, you think about all the equipment that we're going to have to take over there.
Really? Customs? In the U.S., you could just walk right across the border. I kid. No, but seriously. Now it's time to relax for the team, right? Wrong.
Everybody keeps talking about, wow, what a great cultural experience for the players, but you know, it's not like we're going to be touring the countryside. You know, we got a tight schedule.
Head to Croke Park for lunch. Meetings, then practice at UCD at 4 p.m. Lights out late that night. Thursday, meetings and an early afternoon practice. Then dinner at the Guinness Storehouse. That sounds great. Friday, morning walkthrough, sightseeing in the afternoon, pep rally, meetings, bed checks. 9 a.m. wake-up call. Head to Croke for 11. Kickoff at 1:30 local time. Penn State wins 23-17. Over to the airport, leave the Guinness at Customs, back to Harrisburg, PA, then 99 miles back to Losh. 6,700 miles traveled. Is it Akron week yet, guys?
Well, okay, me being late, no. I was taught by somebody to be 15 minutes early.
Yes, you were.
Yes, and so were you on everything. Absolutely. Okay, Braxton Miller, we talked about at the time, Dienhart, big loss for the conference.
No doubt. I mean, this is the two-time reigning Offensive Player of the Year. Can you imagine what's going on with Buckeyes Nation? They must be freaking out losing Braxton Miller for the season.
And the terrible news about Tim Shaw and ALS. It's stunning.
Well, it's just, it's a terrible, terrible situation, and, you know, my thoughts and prayers with him and his family.
All of us. Let's take a look around the top 25. Big games coming up this weekend as well. Well, Tom Bradley in West Virginia got Alabama off the top. Ohio State,
Hello.
They got to break into Hello, yes,
Hello,
at Navy.
Alabama.
Clemson, Georgia, and then Wisconsin will take on LSU.
You know, we talked about with Tom that game with Michigan State and Oregon, the non-conference game being big. How about that one for Michigan State or for LSU and Wisconsin? If Wisconsin has any hopes of making it really far this year, that's a big one at LSU.
All right, your keys to the game.
My keys to the game are the offensive line play by both squads. I think, again, controlling the line of scrimmage is going to be the key to the game. I think Hackenberg trying to protect the ball, don't turn it over, try not to do too much, rely on the running game, and I think it's going to come down to kicking. I really do.
And my big one is force their quarterback to win the game.
Third down conversions. Do you remember how they started last year with third down conversions? Stay on the field, move those chains any way necessary. Maybe the tight ends.
Yeah, big one, no question about that. Great to have you on board. I hope you
Steve.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Welcome, Trey. Welcome.
All right,
Thank you.
You're old news.
Yeah, I know. They asked me back.
Hey.
I said okay.
Andrew Kalista will be going over. Blue White Tailgate will have a presence there. Aaron's, thanks for the chairs. Made in America. We'll see you next week on the show.